Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of Family Matters with Instructor Mike. I am your host, Instructor Mike, and today we are going to talk about seeds, values, and practice parenting, the window of mentorship that parents may have missed, a developmental framework for raising confident, capable children. Now, look, there's a lot of different parenting theories out there. So I figured let me just go on ahead and just add my little concept to it, right? So let's go on ahead and do it. Here we go. So let's talk about the seeds phase. This is the contents of this program today. The seeds phase, building trust and normalizing mentorship during ages 0 to 6 for lifelong learning foundation. Then we're going to look at number 2, the values phase, developing moral reasoning and safe dialogue through respectful disagreement, ages 6 through 12. And then the practice phase, applying correction through autonomy and trust during adolescence, ages 12 to 18. So let's look at the implementation guide. That's going to be the last one. The practical takeaways for parents and educators to apply this developmental framework. Let's go. Here we go. If mentorship feels familiar early, it never feels like intrusion later. Let's say this again. If mentorship feels familiar early, it never feels like intrusion later. Now, by the time most parents say, my kid needs a mentor, the developmental framework, that developmental window for normalizing mentorship has already closed. You may not take that into consideration, right? And this presentation explores why early intervention matters and how to build a foundation for lifelong learning and growth. So let's look at the seeds phase. Remember, we got seeds, values, and parenting. The seeds phase, ages 0 to 6, critical foundation period. So during the seeds phase, the human brain is wide open at the height of its what's called neuroplasticity. And this is where children form foundational beliefs about trust, safety, and whether guidance from adults is reliable or threatening. And this, you can look at Erik Erikson's psychosocial theory of development, right? At the trust versus mistrust phase, the next phase is autonomy versus shame and doubt, right? Erik Erikson's trust versus mistrust, that first developmental stage determines whether children see adults as reliable guides, as Lev Vygotsky would say, right? Or an unpredictable threat to their autonomy. According to Albert Bandura and his Social Learning Foundation, we look at Lev Vygotsky, the more knowledgeable of it, the zone of proximal development. It shows how competent adults create richer learning environments. The environment is so critical to a child's developing mind. Here we go. Let's look at the scientific foundation. So, John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth in their attachment theory foundation, they showed that securely attached children explore more, they take more risk, and they accept help without shame. Shame is defined as the painful feeling of humiliation or distress caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior. So let's look at Albert Bandura's social learning theory. He proved that children imitate competent adults. They also imitate the adults that they probably should not, but that's another thing too, right? They copy who gets praised, who stays calm, and who solves problems effectively. I invite you to listen to one of the episodes of Teach the Fix, Not the Feel, right? Why overloading children's brains with a bunch of emotions, it doesn't teach them how to solve problems. It just teaches them how to name feelings and sit with those names, but it doesn't teach them how to solve problems. Let's look at Lev Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. Vygotsky demonstrated that learning is first social, then individual. More skilled adults create richer developmental zones. And let's look at that critical planting period. Okay, seeds phase 0 to 6. Surround children early with trustworthy, skillful adults to normalize guidance and make mentorship feel natural. Right. That's why when we get to this conversation about single parenting versus, a dual parenting or a two-parent family, y'all going to hard on single parents, but two people alone is not enough. It's not enough. Okay. Think about how many children or how many teachers your children will come across in their school career from preschool or the daycare environment all the way up to 12th grade. But then from 0 to 18, it was just you two? Come on now. Here we go. Let's look at the values phase, ages 6 through 12. Now we're entering into the why phase. And I love this phase. You might even get the why early because children love to ask questions and they need reasons. So they enter Jean Piaget in his cognitive development theory, they enter the concrete operational stage. And in that concrete operational stage, they are developing logical thinking and moral reasoning. They're not being disrespectful, they're learning to think critically and understand cause and effect. If you look at Kohlberg's moral reasoning development, Kohlberg showed how kids move from obeying rules out of fear to following them for fairness. And that bridge, what it does, it bridges obedience and understanding through respectful debate. And it's very important that you understand children and their development so that when they push back, you understand that's them learning, right? Not challenging your authority or whatever that may be, right? A child who can argue respectfully is a child who is learning how to think. The values phase is where children develop executive functions through guided problem solving, right? Scaffolding, Vygotsky's theory of constructivism, the more knowledgeable other, the zone of proximal development. And when we allow for safe questioning and open reasoning, we strengthen their brain's wiring for logic and self control. This isn't defiance, it's development. Here we go. So, the values phase. Let's talk about the neurological development, right? So at ages 6 through 12, it's the critical phase, the values phase. That's the time to be able to plant those values, right? You increase the executive function growth by 3 times, their reasoning capacity development by 90%, and there's a 100% learning through dialogue, right? Diamond and Zalalo's research on executive functions developed through social interaction and reasoning. The memory strengthens through guided problem solving experiences. Under the theory of constructivism, we as humans are the collections of 5 things: needs, experiences, motivations, habits, and education. Their experiences, our experiences are very, very important. Children learn how to hold multiple ideas simultaneously. Complex thinking develops through respectful debate processes. Looking at cognitive flexibility, the prefrontal cortex, that's the part of the brain that controls the logic, the reasoning, and a variety of different things, it is still growing, it's still developing, and it matures rapidly when children engage in safe, moral reasoning. Children learn to see multiple perspectives early, right? Don't wait till they can talk. Let's let's expose them to these things. The earlier that we expose them to these things, the likelihood they can grow a little bit more rapidly than other children whose parents tend to wait until they can talk, right? Or tend to wait until you think they're qualified to reason. And if you don't understand child development, then you may not know when that period is, right? Flexibility grows through experiencing different viewpoints safely. And that's the key word, safely. Mental agility develops through respectful disagreement practices. Let's look at self control development. Impulse control strengthens when children practice reasoning without fear of punishment. Oh, that is so important. Self regulation, right? You're not really able to self regulate in certain cases until you're fully at 25 or sometime thereafter when the prefrontal cortex has fully developed. Until then, you need more knowledgeable others for co regulation. Help me understand things, right? That self regulation or co regulation, it improves through guided discussions, guided moral discussions, guided skill building, just guidance of a qualified, more knowledgeable other. Children develop internal motivation for good choices. Their long term thinking skills emerge through value exploration. So let's look at the practice phase. You may not understand this, but your role is going to change. You lose a percentage of your influence by this phase, right? And you may think, well, they're growing older, they have the ability to be able to reason and things like that. I can talk to them more. And no, you're losing your influence a little bit, and that's developmentally appropriate. Why? Because they want to practice. This is from ages 12 to 18. If you're looking at Erik Erikson's psychosocial theory of development, let's look at the stage of identity versus role confusion during this stage. Adolescents ask, who am I? What do I believe? Okay. Now it's always about them. It's egocentrism. And Jean Piaget, and they talked about ego. They don't have the concept yet to be able to see from the perspective of another just yet. It's still about them, and it needs to be about them, right? What do I believe? Who am I? The brain construction continues until mid 20s with emotional overdrive. If the brain has been loaded with more emotions than skills, or maybe even skills overdrive with emotional context if emotions are necessary for that particular thing. New mentorship, if you're trying to introduce new mentors to them, it feels more like policing and not partnership because you didn't introduce it early. And I give you grace if you didn't know to do these things. But that's why, I call them struggle mentors. When they come inside of a place, and depending upon what community you're in, you get somebody who previously may have done time in a correctional facility or may have experienced some bad outcomes or societally labeled bad outcomes, and they bring that person before a group of juveniles, and you hear the speech. Listen, I just got through doing 20 years in the state pen or in the federal pen. You don't want to go down that road, because if you don't listen to Principal O'Shaughnessy, or you don't listen to Miss Clarewitz, or you don't listen to Mr. Johnson or Mrs. Smith, right? If you don't listen to them, you're going to end up in one or two places. What are those two places? Dead or jail. And the juveniles are like, well, if I'm confused in my role, if home feels like jail, what is jail? And if my mind is dead, what is body death? People don't take that into consideration, right? So it feels more like policing and not partnership. You've missed 12 years of partnering with me when I was at my height of curiosity, my height of neuroplasticity. Now you want me to have a mentor? And that's why a lot of teams reject these mentors. Here we go. So let's look at from director to consultant. Teams seek autonomy, competence, and genuine relatedness. All learning is relational. Education must be rigorous. That just means thorough. Education must be relevant. But according to Dr. James Comer, no significant learning occurs where there isn't a significant relationship. And that mentorship must connect to their values and interest, not yours. Their values and interest, not yours. I'm going to say this one more time. Their values and interest, not yours. Guidance through trust, not control. It builds lasting capacity. Here we go. If you didn't plant trust early, you'll harvest resistance later. I'll say it again. If you didn't plant trust early, you'll harvest resistance later. And I encourage you, we're going to talk about the developmental trust renewal, because we look at Erik Erikson's psychosocial theory of development, and we look at that stage of trust versus mistrust. But you look at the next stages: autonomy versus shame and doubt, and industry versus inferiority, and initiative versus guilt, which is kind of flip flopped, and then identity versus role confusion. But at each of those stages, there is a question from the seeds, values, and parenting or practice phase, right? Where the trust has to be renewed in each stage. And we're going to look at that. Okay. The teenage brain is biologically wired to seek independence and novelty. The prefrontal cortex won't fully mature until the mid 20s, while emotions and maybe even skill deficits, depending upon who you are or who you've been raised by, it runs high. And this is why mentorship planted early feels like feedback. They've seen this. All learning is relational, right? While mentorship introduced late, it feels like punishment. Yeah. So let's look at some self-determination theory and practice. Okay. Autonomy, freedom to choose. Teenagers need the ability to make meaningful decisions about their path while receiving guidance. Let's look at competence, handling charges or challenges. Adolescents must believe that they can master new skills and overcome obstacles successfully. That trust-based mentorship, when all three needs are met, correction feels natural than controlling. There's relatedness, being understood. Do you really understand from their perspective? right? Connection and understanding from trusted mentors creates the foundation for accepting guidance. Okay. So the hidden window of authority identity. Looking at identity or authority identity formation, children develop an internal filter that decides who they listen to and who they block out. Okay. The goal of any instruction is to command attention first. See, just because, Jean Piaget talked about in his cognitive development theory that we have sensory motor, and then it's pre operational, then it's concrete operational, and then it's uh, 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 I'm sorry, the concrete operational and then formal operational, right? But then when you look at it, right, when you look at the pre operational phase, right, the magical thinking, the goal of any early childhood educator is to command the attention of the adult, of the child. And you don't command that attention by hollering at them. Now that has nuance, right? Because if children are trained to respond to the hollering, then I can understand why that occurs. But that's not normal. That should not be a normal thing because children don't like to respond to those things. They can be trained to respond to those things, right? But children develop an internal filter that decides who they listen to, right? Just because they have ears doesn't mean they listen. That's another episode we're going to talk about. Just because they have ears doesn't mean they listen. They are the ones who choose who they listen to. There's a big difference between hearing and listening, right? That filter is shaped by early experience with guidance and mentorship during critical development periods. Timing is everything. Most parents seek mentorship when problems arise, but by then the child's receptivity patterns are already established. The window for normalizing external guidance, it closes gradually through each developmental phase. Looking at the sequential nature of that hidden window of authority identity, mentorship isn't a one-time event, but a developmental sequence. Seeds builds openness, values teach reasoning, and practice applies correction. Each phase builds on the previous foundation for lifelong learning capacity. So, with the complete developmental framework, we talked about this just a minute ago. Seeds builds openness, surround children with competent adults, normalize guidance from others. If they don't see you getting guidance from more knowledgeable others, if they see you being the only one who has all the answers, then you want to get them a mentor. They're going to call you out on it. But mom, but dad, both of you, neither one of y'all got guidance from anybody. You thought you knew all the answers, but now you want me to have a mentor. That's a correct statement they made, right? Let's look at the values. Values grow understanding. I encourage you to stop punishing reasoning. Encourage safe disagreement. I love safe disrespectful behavior. I love it because disrespect simply means they don't like, and they have a right to decide what they like and what they don't like. As long as no one is physically harming another, I love it, right? Encourage safe disagreement. Develop moral thinking through respectful dialogue. And let's look at practice. Practice helps them build capacity. Capacity is defined as the maximum amount something can contain. How do you test capacity in things? Applications and pressure. Applications and pressure. Something is applied to it. The thing applied brings pressure. Can this thing to which the application of pressure has been applied, can it withstand that pressure? Right? Coach for competence, not for control. Respect autonomy while providing guidance. Connect to their values. And what does that equal? A lifelong learning result. Children who experience this sequence become adults who seek mentorship naturally throughout their lives. So here's a practical implementation guide for parents. Different love for different phases. Every developmental phase requires a different kind of love and a different kind of letting go. Oh, let's say that again. Letting go. No shame, no criticism. I encourage you to be honest with yourself. If you created your child so you could find a friend, I understand. I greatly understand. But here's this, your child's only job is to develop. And they can't develop if you don't know how to let go. The goal isn't perfection, It's progression through understanding what each age needs most. So in the seeds phase, 0 to 6, surround with competent adults. Yes, normalize guidance from multiple sources. Model that. Build a foundational trust between you and your child through secure attachment. Let's look at the values phase, ages 6 through 12. Encourage safe disagreement. Teach moral reasoning through dialogue. Develop executive functions through guided problem solving. And then there's the practice phase from ages 12 through 18. Shift from director to consultant. Respect autonomy while providing wisdom, right? Wisdom is defined as the quality of being wise by having knowledge, experience, and good judgment. Be honest with yourself without shaming yourself. Do you have that knowledge? Do you have that experience? Do you have a thing that you have done or things that you have done that could be stated to be that which is good or that which is bad? Right? What's the context of that which is good or that which is bad? See, that's a greater question, right? Connect guidance to their interests. What are they interested in? So let's look at action steps for each developmental phase. The seeds phase, plant trust, create a foundation of security and openness to guidance from multiple competent adults in the child's environment. Introduce children to various trustworthy adults, teachers, coaches, family, friends, community members. Model how to receive feedback gracefully and show children it is safe to learn from others. Create positive experiences with guidance so children associate learning from others with growth and safety. In the values phase, encourage reasoning, develop moral thinking and executive functions through respectful dialogue and safe disagreement with trusted adults. We welcome questions and why conversations as signs of healthy development, not disrespect or defiance. Practice disagreeing respectfully with your child to model how different perspectives can coexist peacefully. Encourage children to explain their reasoning and validate their thinking process, even when you're correcting their behavior. So when you look at the timeline of toddler development through a teenager, you look at the early foundation from 0 to 6, wide open brain period, what's called the height of neuroplasticity. Children form basic trust patterns and learn whether adult guidance is safe and beneficial for their growth. From 6 to 12, the values phase, right? Reasoning development. They're in concrete operational thinking. It emerges according to Jean Piaget. Children develop moral reasoning, learn to disagree respectfully while maintaining relationships. And then at that stage of identity versus role confusion, the practice phase, the identity formation is when the prefrontal cortex is still developing. But the teenagers, they seek autonomy while needing guidance that respects their emergence or their emerging independence and values. So here's some common mistakes and course corrections. So recognizing missed opportunities, you need to understand, or I encourage you to understand where the developmental window may have been missed and how to create new pathways for trust and mentorship, even when starting late. The seeds phase mistakes, becoming the only, oh, we're going to trigger some people here, but becoming the only trusted authority figure. You got all the answers. Be honest with yourself. Where is that desire to want to be the only one who answers everything? How is that helping your child? How is that helping the inner child within you who needs to be reparented? Punishing children for questioning or seeking other perspectives. Yes, they can go, this is one of the things that I hear. Oh. And a parent may say this, right? But when you can listen to your sister, or you can listen to your aunt, or to your grandmother, or to your grandfather, whatever your phase, your mima, pawpaw, whatever. You can listen to somebody else. You can listen to Karen next door. But when I tell you, you don't understand. Yeah, that's the thing. That's developmentally appropriate because maybe you're not speaking or teaching or showing them the way they learn. And that's okay. Give yourself grace. You may not know, right? Creating fear around guidance from other adults. Values phase mistakes. Treating normal questioning as disrespect or defiance. shutting down moral reasoning through punishment. Punishment works so good, it teaches you what not to do. It doesn't teach you what to do. Failing to model respectful disagreement and dialogue. So let's look at some recovery strategies. Start where you are. Build trust incrementally. I would argue they need to see you taking a parenting class. They need to see you learning the science of parenting, the science of early childhood education, the fact that there are not only just manuals, there are programs that can teach you different perspectives on parenting. There isn't just one child development theorist. You've got Kohlberg, you've got Maria Montessori, you've got Lev Vygotsky, you've got Friedrich Froebels, you've got Sigmund Freud, you've got Anna Freud, you've got Yuri Bronfenbrenner, you have Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Abraham Maslow. You have so many theorists out there, right? It's time to learn. It's time to learn. Patient rebuilding. Healing takes time, but it is always possible. New growth. You can plant those seeds of trust at any age. Let's say with our affirmations, it's not my fault. It's what I was taught. It's not my fault. It's what I was taught. It's not my fault. It's what I was taught. Breathe in, exhale. The goal isn't perfection, it's progression. You can start planting trust at any point in your child's development, but the earlier you begin, the easier it grows. Every interaction is an opportunity to build the foundation for lifelong learning, resilience, and healthy relationships with mentorship and guidance. This thing about resilience, you don't know how much you can handle until you're given something to hold. You don't know how resilient you are until your capacity is tested. Here are some resources for continued learning. You can always listen to this Family Matters podcast. Continue exploring developmental frameworks and practical parenting strategies through Instructor Mike's ongoing podcast series, where complex child development concepts are broken down into actionable insights. You can always go to my website, instructormike.com, and access comprehensive resources, frameworks, and training materials for applying seeds, values, practice in your home, classroom, or mentorship programs with detailed implementation guides. I want to thank you for watching this. Remember, the seeds of trust is always alive and ready to grow. For more information, you can email me at mike@instructormike.com, or you can visit us online at www.instructormike.com. This is Instructor Mike, and you've been trained. I'll see you on the next.